Hello everyone, here we are yet again with another tutorial, again in Blender. So this time around I thought I'd share with you a little bit of a interesting workflow for natural environments, for rocks, rock formations, maybe bigger cliffs or whatever you can think of in that realm. There were some cool images online I saw recently and I thought, how can I do this easily, fast and without any sculpting whatsoever in Blender. I know Blender has sculpting tools. I could also use ZBrush or 3D Code or whatever other people use, but I want to see whatever I can do with the tools that I already know and that I have already taught you guys in the previous lessons. So this is more of like an application of knowledge, not necessarily teaching something completely brand new, but kind of like bringing everything together and see how we can use it in different ways and not only in the way I've described in my previous tutorials. So what I want to do here, or what you can see here, is that I have just an empty scene with a guy in here. You can use whatever model you want. I've got this, I purchased this from a website. Pretty cool hazmat guy, doesn't matter. He's only here for scale. You can use whatever you want. Knights, astronauts, men, women, babies, I have no idea. So let's go and start this kind of scene. I have a rough idea in mind. So first I want to try out what I can do with the kind of rocks I want to have in my environment. I chose somewhat of the vertical pillar kind of rock. So we can start with that and then bash our way through this. So right now it looks pretty boring, but let's see what we can do with this. First I want to get it a bit rounder. So we can select the edges, hitting tab of course to change to edit mode, and then you can hit 2 if it's not already selected to select the edges. Control B to bevel the edges a bit. Then maybe I want to add some edge loops. I need a bit more geometry, I think. So press Control R and then you can, with your mouse wheel, add more subdivisions. I don't need actually too many, maybe just like this. Let's see where that gets us. Maybe I need to subdivide more later on, but we'll see. So what I want to do now is, again, I don't want to like sculpt anything. I don't want to go in there and like pull and mold my rock exactly how I want it to look like. I want to work procedurally. I want to work with modifiers as much as I can. So I have now this with a little bit of geometry. Maybe it's not enough, but we'll get to that. We can edit that later. So we need a subdivision surface, so to give us a bit of geometry. So it looks like this right now. And then I want to add a little bit of a displacement. Click on displace, click on new, click on this little icon here. And now we choose distorted noise and we get something really funky looking like this, which is good. So we get lots of randomness. We have the noise generator working as our displacement. So you can also see when we change some of the values, how that changes things. We can go back to the modifier and play with the strengths to not have like a crazy distorted thing, but you can still kind of see the original shape. Let's see if you can get a bit away from that by using a remesh modifier. So that looks pretty interesting. We can now play with the octree depth to generate ourselves some interesting stuff here. We can also up the subdivision surfaces to get the subdivision levels to get ourselves more geometry to play with. This looks already pretty interesting. Let's see, maybe we can use, what happens if we hit smooth? Not so interesting. Stick with sharp. And now we can actually go, if we press tab again, we can play around with the bottom maybe of it. So we get more like an organically grown pillar rock formation with some uneven parts. So you can select the loop, you have the face selected, hold Alt and then click on the on this edge here, and then selects the entire loop. We can scale it up. I need my gizmo. You can move it around. What you can also do is activate this one here, the proportional editing. So it kind of, you hit scale now, you have with your scroll wheel this effector radius, and then you can move these things around, and it will affect the whatever faces are in this radius, and will give you smoother transitions. You can do all sorts of things. You can turn it. We need to make sure that we address the obvious ambiguities here in the shape, but we'll get to that, don't worry. We'll add some more. This looks like a really weirdly shaped banana, but we'll get to that, don't worry about it. So let's see how that has affected everything. So while it's still recognizable as the original stone pillar, the original kind of shape, we now have a bit more variety, and it goes really, really fast. So what we can do with this now, maybe what we want to do, because it looks cool, and I think once we put a texture on it, it will look even better, and you will not see some of the faceting. But I mean, if you want to get rid of the faceting, we can very quickly add another subdivision surface. You don't need to like go crazy with the levels unless you have like a foreground element. It doesn't matter so much, and you see that your triangle count will go up pretty quickly. So you got to be careful, because we want to duplicate this guy a couple of times. So this already looks pretty interesting. So what we can do now is maybe add a bit of another round of displacement, but this time a lot smaller displacement. So we say new, we make sure that it has a different texture here. So here's texture 001. Go into the settings, and we want to make sure that this is not too crazy. Now we had the big distortion. Now we want to add a second level of like really small distortions. But now we might run out of geometry, so we might have to add another level regardless. Always keep your triangle count in mind, so don't up this to like 2 million, and then once you duplicate this 20 times, your computer's gonna go crazy. So be careful of that. There's a bit of these flat edges here I see that come because of, well, the nature of the underlying mesh. So if you want to maybe do another Control R, add an edge loop, turn off the proportional editing, and then you can kind of change these guys a bit. You can do it a couple of times. Oops. So that's pretty cool. Now we get rid of it's a bit rounder. So you can see we have some nice random edges here. You can choose at this point, or when whatever project you are, you can choose to work with a lot of good reference to mold rock areas, rock surfaces that are more towards a realistic Earth-like setting, or you can choose to go completely crazy alien, completely crazy alien kind of stuff. And that's totally up to you. So there we have already something interesting. At this point, you can also choose to like maybe use this for a tree or something. That's totally up to you. But you see, with a few little things, we can choose. We can make something really random, organic, looking really quickly, and then based on the texture you put on it, it will take on a different kind of character. So what we can also do now is I've set this up. I'm going to use Eevee for the entire tutorial so that we can see everything in real time. Give it a second to load. So we can also throw on a texture here. Let me get rid of some of these things I don't need. I need the point and light. My dude already has some textures. I just want to see how this rock looks and make sure that I'm only using as much geometry as I really need. So let's use our nodes in the world. Let's choose an environment. I'm using an HDRI again because that just works best for me. So I've got some from HDRI Haven. I know I wanted to kind of like have a bit of an overcast kind of scene. So there's some craziness I need to add. Give this a material. Say new, call it rock maybe. This is really glowing atomically. Maybe my bloom is a bit too... Yeah, there's a lot of bloom in here. We don't need that necessarily that much. I also want to set the world a bit darker, so it's not so atomic. It's a really nice landscape, and it kind of has like a similar kind of feel to what we're trying to do. Maybe a bit too much vegetation, but this kind of feel we're trying to achieve, which is cool. So let's see, what did I want to do? Yes, make a texture for this guy. And then maybe I'll just do one texture for everything for now. So let's see, we'll add an image texture. Plug it into the base color. Nice and black. We'll open our textures and see. I prepared some. Let's see what we can do with those. Hopefully they will work. This one looks okay. I totally forgot about another one. Okay, so here we have something. Always make sure when sometimes things don't show up, Control A, rotation and scale. That will have effect on how the image is portrayed on here and also how the modifiers will work. So be mindful of that. We need to use a different kind of mapping. So I have clicked on the image texture, press Control T to pull this thing up. You need to have the Node Wrangler add-on installed. It's already in Blender. You just need to activate it in the Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, Node Wrangler. Make sure you have that, and then you have some shortcuts available to you. I want to change the texture coordinate from UV to object, and then I want to plug in a vector transform node to get world coordinates. Change it to box, and there we have box. Let me reset the scale as well. So now we have the same kind of scale applied to all objects, which is great. I usually change the type to texture, doesn't matter, but here at least it makes sense that I can upscale this and then get a nice texture going here. So this looks pretty wild, but kind of good for what I'm trying to do. One thing I also want to do is, because it's just too overcast, I want to add a bit of a light source. So I'm adding a sunlight, putting this in, and then we don't really have a particular sun direction, so I can choose whatever sun direction I want, basically. I just need a very simple light to just get something going. I think the HDRI is still a bit too strong. I want to see like the different sides of my object. Maybe make the sun a bit stronger. This is not indicative of the final kind of lighting I want to go for, but I just need an indication of how the light hits the geometry and the kind of effect that it gives, and see if it's a nice 3D shape. So that works quite well. I think I'll go with probably a bit more of an even texture, and then I'll mix it up with a different kind of material. Maybe add some greens or whatever. Like here, you have a lot of different kinds of greens that are peeking out here and there. We can build ourselves really quickly, mix shader to just get that indication going. Let's scale this guy up a bit. Looks horrible, but on the ground it's fine. Maybe the pillar is a bit on the small side, so I just definitely want to get it bigger. You see how when I reset the scale, looks funny. When I reset the scale, it kind of resets the modifiers. There's some pixelation here. Let me see if I can just use the blend a bit. Yeah. It helps a bit, but it doesn't, not necessarily for the better. Maybe a little bit we add. So that works pretty well. So, I mean, we already have some sort of pillar here, and that was really fast, right? So depending on how crazy you want to go, you can adjust these parameters and do more. So let's maybe, I'm a bit concerned about the silhouette, that it's maybe too boring. Maybe we need some more stuff going on. You see, if we play with the strength of the second displacement, we can get bigger chunkiness. So that will, however much of this kind of edgy in and outs you want to have is very dependent on the scale of your object. If you have like a massive pillar and you look at it from really far away, then you probably want to have less of these big spiky things, or you're going for something completely strange alien, then you can go ahead with that. But it will help with the feeling of scale to have less of that if you go for a big rock formation, or if you want to go for a smaller one, then you can do something crazier. But it will automatically, if you add these kind of things, it will automatically make your object feel smaller. So be mindful of that. Can so let's play around with this. You can see you can get interesting variations. So what we can also do, and what will help us to really quickly populate the scene, is that let's go in edit mode with tab, select an edge, hit A to select everything, Shift D, excuse me, Shift D, and now we have two. Of course, they're going to be completely the same. But we can easily squeeze this guy, make him a bit fatter. You can also take this guy. Actually, I want to move him a bit further away. you see what happens now. I have the proportional editing on, and I don't want that. I don't want this to be affected. So if I want to work on this guy, let's say I want to rotate some of the top with proportional editing, I need to make sure that the other structure will not be influenced. So you can like introduce like this kind of like shit in this kind of swirl. But what happens now is that we have to be careful because there is a remesh modifier. And it will remesh the entire thing. So if these two are not connected, it will make the other one disappear. And we don't want that. So let's see. We need to, I want to make this a bit chubbier overall to just have a different look. But what we can do now is we'll take this. I mean, now you have to press Control L to say select all linked items. What we can do now is that we'll connect these two. Oops. And there we get the proportional editing thing again. I've also flattened this out a bit. This is not what I want. So again, let's select this. And now if we join these two together, it will actually create one mesh out of this because of our remesh modifier. You will also see that now that I'm working with it, it will slow down a bit in performance because it has to do a lot of calculations. So if it feels too slow for you when you do these kind of things, just you can collapse some of your modifiers and then turn them off. And then you will see that depending on which modifier is causing the slowdown, that you can see here the second subdivision is really slowing things down. Now you can move it more easily. And then we enable them again. And what you can also see here, which is very cool, is that it will create very natural looking kind of blend effects where you can see how it created kind of like a cavity in here, which is really cool. I mean, I would have never sculpted that or modeled that. So now you can build yourself really cool organic looking rock formations that are consisting of like multiple objects. And yeah, that can be for really can make for really interesting results. So you can of course take this guy. Let's make another copy. Okay, I really need to turn the subdivision off. Let's turn these two off. You can scale this a bit smaller. You can make it a bit thinner as well. Maybe I want to select this one, make it a bit fatter, but I need to have a bit of a so now of course a bit low poly again. Let's add this again. So this has gotten this little thing here, which is interesting. Maybe that's something we can work with, right? To make interesting geometry. So let's see if we extend this out a little bit, rotate a little bit, and then bevel this a bit, make it a bit bigger. You can really see how it slows down now. It has very unintended. You see how in thinner areas this remesh modifier will be a bit more. How do I say? It cares less. Only if you up the octree depth, you will see you get something closer to what you have originally modeled. And which is pretty cool though. You can see how you can add more how you can add more geometry to it, just with like adding one more value here, which can give you more realistic results. So what you can do is like, the closer these things are to camera, you can actually increase the octree depth, kind of like in a game when you play with LOD values. And the further you move to the back, you can use lower values because the details don't matter so much. And because you can see that here at octree depth 6, I have 290,000 triangles. But if I go to 5, I only have 160,000. So there you can do a lot with optimizing your scene. And in Eevee, you will need to do, with larger scale environments, you will have to do some optimization. But it's pretty cool. We, for now, playing around with this guy, we can use that kind. And I mean, if you look up close, it is pixelated here. But if you're here, it doesn't really matter so much. The only thing that would matter to me is that there are some quite dark shadows in this version that can detract from, again, the scale of it. But I think this is looking pretty good, and I didn't sculpt anything at all. I'm just playing with my modifiers. I mean, this is the kind of workflow I usually do, a bit more on the technical side. I understand if that's not everybody's preferred way of doing it. Maybe some people want to be artistic and sculpt and not have to deal with 3D. But the good thing is that we can apply this thing to anything now. So if you want to add, if we go into edit mode and add a cube, I mean, the cube will not do much. It's basically like a material, so all the modifiers are applied to this now, which is pretty cool. So if you feel like making round boulders, you can do that. And you can duplicate this, of course, the entire modifier stack and apply them to other objects. You see, though, that it's not applied to the ground plane because the ground plane just shares the shader with my rock formations and not the modifier stack. Because for the ground, I want to use a different modifier. So this looks already pretty cool. Let's make our ground plane now, and then we can add more rock formations and really build out our scene. Before we do the ground, I wanted to show you a few more different kind of just random textures I found, some rocks and some stuff here. So, and see how it takes on a very different character. So this is something more edgy and contrasty, which works very well actually. Let me see if I can. What happened? It's a bit too shiny. I just need to play with the roughness a bit. So now it has some very shiny parts. Let's see if we invert that, what happens. Yeah, it becomes less shiny and makes a bit more sense. So this is pretty cool. This is pretty cool indeed. I'll get more into this later. Just want to play around with it a little bit. So let's maybe use something more sandy. So you see, it could be something in Africa or whatever. Has a very different look to it now. It's very cool. It doesn't even matter that much that you can see the seams here and there. Now we have something smaller where you can see like the grass growing on it. Maybe not so ideal, this one. What else do we have? Maybe, actually I have here a picture of like concrete. So this looks more like a man-made kind of sculpture. This could be cool as well. A very big termite hill, I don't know. What else do we have? Some more like grayish kind of rock. That's pretty cool as well. It has all these kind of like cuts in here. So that looks pretty neat as well. Let's leave this for now and draw our attention to the ground plane. So we'll actually need some subdivision levels here. Tab, and then right click, subdivide, maybe 30. And then we do our usual thing of subdividing the plane, maybe one more, and then adding our displacement. But what I want to do first is to maybe add a bit of a slope to it. So if I make this sufficiently large, we can get like a slope here and the proportional shifting. So maybe like this much of a slope. Maybe a bit more. You're getting all these like interesting overhangs here. That's maybe something we can play with as a design element. That's pretty cool as well. And then we can try to like elevate certain points. Make it larger, affect a certain different area. We can dial that in later. I just want to get some quick variety in here. Maybe some valleys as well. But of course, we don't want to do that forever, so we want to bring in some displacement. We have a new texture here. And it's a bit on the large side. So we always want to see how it's best to look at this in textured mode, because we want to always make sure that we don't go crazy with the geometry if in the end we're not going to be able to see anything in the texture itself. So if you sculpt like lots of stuff and then it kind of gets lost and you can achieve the same kind of effect with textures in the first place, then why go through all the trouble? Let's see though what we can do here. We want to make this a lot bigger. These kind of really large scale changes. You can kind of see what's happening here now. More smaller ones or like larger ones. Let's see if we go back and actually, it's probably just it's still we need bigger deformations. Yeah, this kind of stuff here. That looks better. Like also kind of matches the ground, so that's pretty cool. Maybe it's a bit too much already, but I think this will get us most of the way. So we can also, if you want to, because now it has a bit of this like pointiness, maybe if you try to add our favorite remesh modifier, and things go crazy. Okay. That is interesting though. What you can do now is that we duplicate this and get rid of the remesh modifier. Move it slightly up again. So now what we're getting are these like extra chunky bits here. Let me try and change to smooth, maybe another level. Back to sharp. It has kind of smoothened it out now, which is not kind of what I want, but this is pretty interesting. So there's no law that we have to only use one plane. We can use multiple. This adds a very nice different kind of like visual hooks in here that we can use. And it was a bit straight, but I think we can paint that out later. So it adds this kind of nice secondary layer on here. Let's make sure we save that. And we can also choose to make our octree depth a bit lower to like have it fit in with the rest. So that looks pretty cool already. So you see it looks very repetitive here, but if you're on the ground, nobody cares. Let's see what our light is doing here. It doesn't matter where the sun is, it's always going to have the same lighting, so you can just put it conveniently wherever it is good for you in the viewport. We can dial it down a little bit to make sure we get that overcast feeling. So we can think a bit about framing. So if I press 0, I can see my camera. Make sure you have go to view, lock camera to view. Go to your camera settings. Make sure your clipping is not crazy low. Set your focal length. I'll go with a wide shot for now. I'll do a variety later on. But for now, this wide shot is going to be serving me well. I'm going to try to do an establishing shot. Also go to this printer thing here. Set your aspect ratio that you want. I want this widescreenish kind of thing. Press the home key on your keyboard to maximize the camera here. I mean, I've gone through this again and again, but it's kind of good to, I think, repeat it. So I feel like I want to kind of have like a shot like this. I mean, you've probably seen this after you're watching this after seeing all the materials I've done for it, which I've done separately. So this is not going to look 100%, absolute 100% the same, but it uses exactly the same kind of technique. So there's nothing different. I've just, because for the texture I've used for my tutorial, I've used a rock texture that is that I bought, which I cannot include in this package. So I wanted to use royalty-free images that I can package and give you. And also this helps me to kind of streamline the process a bit more after having gone through it multiple times, to show you really the best way to do it without any random experiments that don't go anywhere. So this is looking pretty good. What I like really is where the highlight hits here and where these big gashes are in between, the kind of different spiky looks for this rock. I think it works really well. So it gives a good variety. We have to work a bit on what we can do with the surface here, but because it's a bit too even, so we're going to work with probably like breaking up the texture a little bit and adding some light and shadow, maybe some shadow, some objects out of the shot that can give us like nice shadows. Like what I mean with that is if we have our camera here, this is a bit too straight, but you get the idea. It's like not, you can't see it, but it gives us the feeling of maybe we're like inside a cave or looking out. It gives the idea that there's more to the scene than just what you see, what I have here in my field of view. So it indicates, hey, we're like in the larger world and this is just part of it. Let's put this guy away for now. So what we need to do now is duplicate all this stuff around. Sorry, it's a bit hard to know if I'm actually in camera mode or not because it's perfectly... Okay, yeah, so now I'm in camera mode. So what we can do is we can try to build this up a bit more. Let me deactivate these guys. We can build this out a bit more if we want to. Make sure that though that it's connected. If you want to have multiple pillars that are disconnected from each other, then you need to actually make a copy and have it as a separate object. So we have this kind of thing now. Maybe it's a bit too even. Like what I mean is like too symmetrical. Maybe I want to have it attached here. Maybe I can try to get these kind of holes again, which I really like. I think I need to pull it apart a bit more. Yeah, I'm getting this again. That's very good. That is very interesting. Now you can force these by having these objects barely touch. You can kind of create like these kind of gashes in between here. Yeah, so that's really cool. That's what I want. This makes for some really interesting stuff. Okay. So maybe what we can also do is just for variety's sake, because we're kind of making one of our masters in terms of like what we want to spread around, which we kind of want to have as the piece that will help us to populate most of it and then derive some more variations from it. So I just want to make some smaller pieces into it. getting down a bit more to human size. So I think that looks cool because it kind of now, okay, now we sculpted ourselves a cave, like an entryway through here. That is amazing. So what you need to do with this technique is really harness happy accidents as much as you can. Okay, that was not planned. Now it almost looks like some kind of habitat where you have like holes in here. That is pretty cool. So you can surprise yourself, even that was not planned, but that is very cool. So you can make also this into some kind of like hut with a completely different material to create like alien designs or whatever. So we have that now. And now we can like push this around and make a couple of copies of it. And see how that works with our scene. I'm still in camera view, so we can like think about how we want to frame this. Maybe this is our main feature piece here, I don't know. Can go out of the camera and then copy and paste this, like Shift D it around. Make it a bit larger, squish it. What we can also do is, if we randomize the, let's see what happens if we randomize the transform. There will be something happening, but I think it's going to be very, very slow. Yeah, we can definitely work with that, but I think it's going to be too slow since our geometry is a bit too much on the heavy side. So what can we do with this guy, right? So we can probably don't want to have it look exactly the same, so we want to change things up a bit. Just quickly trying to generate some different kind of ideas. So you see when I reset rotation and scale, it will create a different result. Now you do not need to follow that. You can just choose to not reset the scale. And if you like the result of what you're getting, you do not need to reset the scale unless the texture scaling, unless you make it like really, really tiny, then maybe. So you see now we have a completely different one. And whether or not that actually makes a difference is totally up to you. Like if I, for example, take this guy, duplicate it, rotate it, make it slightly bigger or whatever. Like if it's like in the background, not like this. If it's like in the background, you see like it has a completely different silhouette. Nobody will be able to tell that this is the same as this one. I don't like that it has a similar grouping. So what you should think about is not like, oh, is this the same geometry, but how does it look like? Does it look like the same geometry? Then it's bad. Then you need to change it. But if it doesn't look like the same geometry, if it doesn't look like it, but it still is, nobody cares. So we're getting some interesting stuff here. And of course, like you can change this to any kind of, if you want to have more massive cliffs, then make it just boxier. Just make it like a couple of big cubes. Like for example, if we add like a cube to it, and then add another one, like just duplicate another one. And you see now you have like a couple of chunkier rocks, and then you can add in all sorts of other stuff. It doesn't have to be these columns, right? It can be anything. And we still have these like cool, like random holes in here, which are amazing. Let's go inside. So cool. So anything works really. You do not need to do this, right? You do not need to do this. You do whatever is interesting to you, whatever fits your design. Because with this one, you can generate any kind of natural looking stuff, natural looking rocks and that kind of stuff, or trees or habitats or whatever. And then you can combine it with like some hard surface stuff, which we actually should do. So what we can do is like add something that is obviously different. So instead of like a chunky thing, we're going to have like a bit of a something more smooth looking. So that it obviously looks different. That it obviously looks different, and also that it looks different in the silhouette. That will be very important, so that we can really see that this is a different item. And then you can add like a texture to it. I'm lazy, so I'm just going to use this one. Copy paste it. But of course I'm going to use a different texture. This cool thing. Okay, looks cool. So we already have something interesting here, and we can mix that up even more later on. And then you can add some details to it if you want. Like for the previous example I did, is just do a couple of insets and extrusions. So you get a bit of a silhouette going, whatever that is, right? Doesn't need to be really anything. You can have another cylinder. Where's the cylinder? I mean, you can design whatever you want with this one. Just a bunch of antennas or whatever. You can add like a different material to it, so you can actually see it. No, changed everything, of course. Let's call it, I don't know, dark, whatever. But for this one, I want building sign. Okay. Stupid. So it looks a bit cooler, but that's fine. I'm going to change that later or whatever. Okay. So I don't know. It became kind of like a little bit of an outpost, and I don't know what this hazmat guy is doing here. Who knows? Put an astronaut. I don't know. Put a Viking. Put a knight in there who finds like some kind of tech. I have no idea, right? I like you can mix and match things however you want. Put some glowing lights in here. Use these cavities that we have, right? Where's the light? Where's the light? Point light. Oh yeah, look at this. Bit warmer, bit less crazy hot. Maybe 300. Okay, and like look at that. Somebody's at home here. So pretty cool already. So now you can noodle around with this and build up your own. You can build up your own scene. You can populate however you want these to be everywhere around here. What I would suggest is that we create something like a smaller one that you can plug, and then let's reset rotation and scale. And it's going to look very, very different, which could be cool. It could be kind of like a different kind of structure here, like a secondary structure that you can give a different material. I don't know. But the cool thing is now that we can use this just like as a foreground element. Or maybe we don't want that. Like you can refuse to reset the scale and just use it like this. So it's smoother. It looks a bit like a turd, but turds are cool. So we can have that as kind of like a foreground element. And you can choose to like get rid of stuff and then have it look a tiny bit different than the other one. So once now we have our hazmat guy and you put him in the foreground, ideally not floating maybe, or maybe he wants to float. Put him here. Have him look towards whatever he found there. Too bad we can't see the light now. We need to make another one. Oh yeah. Maybe he's going home for like dinner. I have no idea. Maybe that's where he lives. Could be cool. Who doesn't want to live here? So you shithole. And you see how we can kind of now our whole environment is coming together. And now it's basically about shot design. You can map out a little area. And it's good now to, at some point it's good to work from the camera point of view, because it will help you really know where you need to position your elements, because you do not need to go crazy with this. You don't need to put a crazy amount of stuff in there. You need to just put enough for that shot that you want to get. Or for the animation that you want to make, I have no idea. That's totally up to you. It kind of looks like carrots upside down. And I think once we add like, maybe this turd is not working too well. So we already have this going, and once you have enough, then you just call it quits. What we can also do is what I feel like is kind of missing. We need something on the ground. So let's make quickly a new mesh. Okay, we have this guy. Let's quickly do some things to it. It doesn't really matter what you do here. We're going to take that apart. Distance looks somewhat random. So we have this. We apply our rock texture. And then we quickly add subdivision. Actually, what happens if I do just a remesh on this one? Not much. Let's slot in a displacement. Where is it? Here. Add something new again. I don't even know if you need to do a new one, but it helps. Okay, what are we getting here? This looks pretty cool. Maybe not so crazy. You can choose whether to like have it more edgy or more soft. Let's put the remesher on now, just to get it a bit smoother. Yeah, I think that looks okay. Don't forget to save. So now what we can do with this, let's give it a name. Wow, rock. Yeah, that's pretty iconic. Let's have our let me see, which plane do we have here? We have the remeshed plane and we have the regular plane. I think the regular plane should be enough because I want to scatter some rocks around it, and I don't not necessarily need to scatter it on the entire plane, which is mostly out of the camera anyway, but the smaller plane might just be worth it. So you go to this little funky icon called particle properties, add one, we call it hair, we want advanced. Do we need 1,000? Yeah, we need 1,000. We check rotation, we check render, we say render as object, and I want my rock. Why is nothing happening? Okay, we need to up the size. And that is really interesting. Why is that happening? So maybe that looks really interesting though. I guess with the remesher, something funky happens. So let's forget about that. Let's put it to the regular plane. Interesting. Advanced. I need to find, where's the render as object rock? Ah, here. You see now there it goes. Okay, so don't do it with the remesher. Okay, something funky happens. Let's up the scale. Let's work with the scale randomness, and maybe it's a bit too many. Let's do 500. Again, let's check in camera. It's super low poly, so we can scatter these around however we want. But of course, this plane now is kind of interfering with everything. We can't see them anymore. Let's see if we say, can we move them out of, we can rotate them a little bit. Can we say maybe emit from words? Emit from volume? It doesn't really matter. It matters what it visually looks like. That is really the only measure we have. Find some ways this best works for you. If we want to apply to this plane, we can, I think, just say apply the remesher, and then it's going to be fine. We can also do, now that I'm thinking about it, we can change this to a new material, and you can add like water or whatever. Let's do that. Oh, I have to make a new one. Call it water. Get rid of this one. And we are going to make ourselves 1 second shader. Which shader should we use? Is the specular shader? I have no idea. I haven't made water in a while. Not turquoise. Yeah, that's fine. We can make ourselves a quick normal map. we do it the usual way. I'm doing all the same things as I did before, just to get my regular bump mapping, my regular box mapping again. This is not working as I intended it to. Oh, maybe I just should use this one. Looks pretty cool. It has kind of like an icy surface now. These rocks look now a tad odd. They're too even. Let's change it to, what did I have? Yeah, faces. Let's change it to faces. And maybe more randomness in the scale. Yeah, I think that would work. Maybe also less of them. Let's have them stand on somewhere. Does he stand on anywhere? Yeah. So we're kind of getting somewhere with this. So we have a bit of variety in the ground. We have a bit of variety with our environment. We can play around with it a bit. We can do different kinds of shots. Maybe I don't want this here. This is the original stone. You can move this independently of everything else. So you can just place it wherever you feel like it needs to go, which is okay. So let's put that. Let's put that here. Cool. So now we can work on something. Cool. So this is pretty much all there is in terms of geometry and the kind of thing. So I think next we just want to dive a bit deeper into the shader creation and lighting and see how far we can push this in Blender. Okay, so let's see what we can do with this in terms of lighting and shading. I maybe want to add some more buildings later on, but I'll rather do it together with the shaders and everything. So one thing I always like to do is just add. I mean, we can try to add this guy here. Maybe it's a bit too straight, so we'll just add a. Actually, we can add a. Maybe it's a stupid way of getting like variety into the into the shadow, but I just don't want it to be like a straight shadow. So the famous giant flying banana, and that will help us. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. Help us with the composition of this one. So what I also want to do is add a cube, make the cube really big. Kind of like so. Reset position and scale, dive inside. It has become a lot darker, but we want to add a new material, call it fog. Get rid of this, add a principal volume, plug the volume into the volume, and everything disappears. We need to go down to maybe 0.01, and we have fog. We can change the color of this. You can have it like, looks like a snowstorm, or we can have something. You can have, no, red would probably not go well. This is kind of like a really cool atmosphere here. Maybe we want to go with 0.02. Maybe it's a bit too much. 0.01. We can also play with the sun a little bit. Maybe the sun is too much. That is not bad. Where's our flying banana? Cube 0. Oh, okay, let me set origin to geometry. Oh no, that's not that one. Cube 01. Rename it to banana, and we can play around with that a bit more. And you can position it exactly where you want it. So you can kind of see how these things here recede into the background, and that it doesn't really matter if it's exactly the same thing. You won't be able to tell. Especially not if you make it really big. Or if you make it really small. So this guy is outside the cube. You can hide it for a second and you can select it again. Enable it again. Maybe you want to have these a bit more rotated here. And then we can work a bit on the rock texture. I said I want to mix it up a little bit. Let's see what we can do. We can add a mix shader, a mix RGB. Plug that in. Make a copy of this one. Just select it, Shift D. Let's do it like this. Maybe I want to have a different texture here. What could be good? Maybe we can try to add grass. So I have like a generic tree texture. That looks quite horrible right now. But we can now play with the factor that it needs to be blended. And I usually use some kind of black and white image. You can plug in here. Get some coordinates. And you can see what it does. It now makes everything predominantly green, which could be kind of what you want. So it gives a very different, feel to it. But maybe we want to invert it. So basically do the opposite. So yeah, now it's predominantly gray, but we have some patches of green. Which could be cool. We can also plug in a color ramp to just play with the harshness of the difference between these two. So if I pull these closer together, the difference between the green and the rock will have a harsher blending, rather than when it is this, which is a bit more soft. So now it looks kind of like moss, which is pretty cool. And I don't know, maybe it needs to be mossy, but then in order for that to work, I think we would need to have more, we would have to play with our displacement here to have it stronger in order to simulate yeah, maybe that's a bit too much. To simulate that uneven surface a bit more. But I'm not too sure about that if you want to have this kind of mossy surface. It's interesting for sure. We can also try let's see if we mix this with something else. Let me see what we have. Maybe we just want to have a variety of tones. So here we're mixing in some of the brownish tones, which almost gives it more of a desert kind of feel. Maybe something even browner. That is very interesting. So now we're creating a completely new material. We can flip these. Which is also interesting. What else do we have? Maybe something more contrasty. These are quite similar in terms of feel. But it could be it's now a more evil looking planet, more foreboding. This could be pretty cool. How it has spatters of this whitish stuff here. We can also try a different blending, more something technical here, which creates something more alien looking. It's pretty cool as well. So you see there's really a wide variety of possibilities that you can choose from. You can also try to integrate this guy a bit better by adding some of this here. So if we copy and then paste this guy. Wait, oh, this is the wrong one, excuse me. Just get rid of it. We need the other material. So we plug this in here. We plug this in here. Base color. That's not working so well. Wait a minute. I think I need this one here. Yeah, so we kind of get a bit of the dirtiness onto this. Up close probably looks horrible, but actually not too bad. This looks pretty cool. Kind of looks old and weathered now. So we can try to make this even darker if we want to. I think maybe we need to, there's going to be a variety of things we can do. Either take the strength of the sun down. Turn the sun off even. It depends on what you want the main illumination to be like. If it's like the fog. Can have a very subtle only effect on here. Sorry, the main illumination to be the house itself. We can play with the banana. Now it's coming almost into our frame, which is not what we want. So I've just added quickly a couple of lights here, nothing spectacular. So you see there's just like a spotlight here, another spotlight here, maybe an area light here. I just want to highlight certain areas of it. If you turn these off, it kind of, a few things get lost. So I basically want to add these to highlight certain areas. Where did this one go? Oh, this one is right behind the guy here. Maybe I can use this to pop him out a little bit more from the background, but nothing too spectacular happening here. So if you have let's add another one. So let's see, let's add a spotlight, put it here, beef it up. And you see the atmosphere will take care of it, that we actually can see it. So if we want to highlight another area, we can do so. You can see how we can light up certain other areas that we want to have maybe highlighted. Let's try here. Maybe we wanna call attention to this place, basically. So how you can think about it is that we have basically made the design, but we haven't had any light. So now we can actually push the design by designing, painting with light, actually. And you can just put the lights wherever you feel like you need a highlight. Maybe we want to put a highlight here, and then we want to like put another dude here. See how I've highlighted this area, and maybe there needs to be another dude here. Who does God knows what. He's fishing. He's like welcoming the other guy. I have no idea. He is really fat. Now, let's not squish him. Let's see how he fits in there. It's good to have a repeating element so that we get a sense of the scale here. I want his suit to catch some highlights, so let's move the light a bit more towards where we can actually see that. I think I need to... It should be catching some highlights. Okay, it's fine this way. A bit to the side. Maybe he's not standing. Yeah, that's what happens. Shoop. Okay. That is better. Well, now we can see the floating light, which is not good. Let's make sure we enable contact shadows for all of these guys, so the shadows look better and are more accurate. I also added an area. Oh, there's an area light here. And an area light here. Same thing, you just like, you see how it's just pointed upward, just to give us some separation. Let me turn this off so I can see. Yeah, so now this one doesn't really make any sense here. I probably want to get rid of that, or I want to have it. Yeah, maybe not. Well, it's fine. We can put him. We can highlight him later on in the in Photoshop. So let me see what we can do with these lights here. Now we can't see that light anymore. Maybe I'll add like another, I don't know, little bonfire here. I'm actually not sure if I want to keep this here. Let's see. Maybe I also want to duplicate that one so we can actually see a bit more of that design. Not that it's anything special, but what can we do with this? Just so we can see it a bit better. So let's see how that looks. Yeah, maybe another one, just make it fatter. Let me just check that quickly. Not that it looks like complete crap, which it does anyway. I don't care about this too much at this point. I just want to have something there so we can see it better. Maybe I want to have another spotlight, so I can highlight this area here, like, yeah, like that. Maybe, I mean, these guys maybe set up like a perimeter, or like they're supposed to investigate, and they have like, they're like on this shitty planet, and maybe they set up some like some research station and you need to highlight some of these guys. Maybe it's better if the cone comes from the other side. Yeah, like this. So it kind of gives us these like lines towards the design, and then we can show it off better. Let's turn this off to have a look. Alt A to deselect everything so we can get a better look at it. Yeah, I think that looks pretty cool. And now we just like, I want to kind of, I'm kind of seeing in the background here, like, where do we need more geometry? Do we need some, for composition's sake, do we need some of these rock formations further in the back? Let me get rid of this. Maybe we do. So we can always throw a bit of fog in there later, or we can take our cube, make a copy, and add some more low-lying fog towards the back. See how that looks with and without. You can see how here the fog gets a bit denser towards the bottom, which can be nice. Do we need this one? Oh. Where's the spotlight? It's this one. Oh no, it's this one. It's appearing here. Maybe turn this a bit down. Be nice to have a reflection of this point light in the water. Can we get that? Yeah, here. But this might be a weird location for it. Maybe it's better here. So that brings us pretty close, I think. And as a next step, then what I want to do is maybe we need like a bigger mass here. Sorry, I just need to try something. We still have that foreground element. What can I do with that one? Let me try to make it really funky looking. I mean, you can really play around a lot with this stuff. Just need to make sure you decide on something in the end. Maybe this is a bit too heavy here. Maybe it's too heavy because we have him already here. If you put some clouds in the background, cloudy, foggy things, then I think it should be fine. Do we want to have this guy here? Maybe not. Squeeze him. No, it looks really pretty interesting how it turned out. Almost like a coral kind of thing. We can hide the cone a bit here, the cone of that spotlight. And we can bring some distance in between these later on. So this might be cool. Okay. Let me see what happens if I up the world to... Okay, it just makes everything brighter, which is okay. We can darken it. Maybe it's better to have some brighter values in it to later get rid of, have better values to work with when we grade it in Photoshop and make it maybe a lot darker. This is like completely off the light, but doesn't look good. One still looks pretty good actually, maybe 0.15. Yeah, that gives us a lot of stuff, I think, to work with. So let me see. See, you have slight, very slight tangents. If this is the shot you decide on, just make sure you just avoid these kind of tangents and make them properly overlapping or whatever you feel like. Make some slight adjustments. Don't have it too regular. Don't have it too even. Have a nice grouping of these elements. And now what we can do, now that we have this, we can go into our camera, Shift D, press Escape, and now we have a duplicated camera in this scene. Make sure you go into the scene and choose the new camera that you're looking through a different camera, otherwise you're gonna change your original camera. So now we can move around and go back and still have our original. And now we can jump here again. Now we can choose maybe some different angles to work with. Here, of course, you can benefit by having more of the scene built out to have more, like a higher variety of angles. And let's change maybe the focal length so you don't have always the same kind of focal length. So let's change it to 50 millimeter. It's kind of a classic. And if this is a bit too low poly here, we can always change that and say we want to have a bit more geometry. So if we up the viewport the subdivision level of our ground plane, then we can get a bit of like smoother surfaces here, which is good. So we want that. So let's see what we can do. So now we can get an entirely different angle on our design here. So depending on how you want to frame your design, maybe we can get something with the reflection in here. That would be cool. I kind of want to keep one of these guys always in the shot, so that we have still something to relate to. Maybe I do need to choose a slightly wider angle. Let me get back to my camera settings. Maybe 35 mil is also good. Yeah, I think that would work better with this. Also for the water, maybe, let's see, object. Maybe I want the reflections a bit clearer. I think it looks cooler. And we can get really close here. Now we have a bit of the stuff of the HDRI in the background, which is a bit annoying. Maybe we can get something else there. I'll try the different HDRI maybe that I have. It's similar though. Let me try what happens then. Let's load it in. That's a bit better. We can also get this and then rotate it on the Z-axis to get something different here. But for this one, as you cannot, you see here, we can get some of this going. We can also get rid of it completely. So this is maybe better. Maybe I want to disable the second fog. Get some more clarity in this. For this shot at least. Can say shading smooth to get some rid of these like steppings here. Of these. Okay, this is also cool. What if I reset? Yeah, okay. So let's see if we can do some final adjustments in the texture here. From this angle, I'm certainly not too fond of it. Maybe too bright, maybe. Make it a bit darker, more interesting. So I'm missing a bit the separation from the background here. Maybe I need to turn some of the spotlights off. Or is it the area light that I need to turn off? I can still do it in Photoshop later. Maybe if I change the world setting, I mean, I can just turn it off. Yeah, that actually works. That's not too bad. That is not too bad. This shot is kind of nice. Okay, so we can just do quickly another one. So we have 3, which is a good number. Shift D, escape. Escape just so you don't move it, because when you press Shift D, it wants to allow you to place it. Maybe we do like a zoomed in one. Let's say 85 mil, and there you go. I already did the mistake. Make sure to select the camera first, and then make the changes. 85. Maybe some sort of aerial shot would be nice. Maybe I can use one of these guys as my maybe we'll go down to 50 millimeter. Just so we can get a bit more on the frame. The environment is not the largest, but of course, if you have a larger environment, then you can do more with these shots. Sorry, more with the focal range. Jesus, this guy's floating. Oh well. Kind of see how we want to frame this. This is a pretty cool shot as well. Very graphic. Yeah, let's leave it at that. So we have these shots and we want to render them out. So we do it the usual way. For this one, you can just press F12 and you get a render out of it. Of course, not before you set your render resolution. I set it to 6,000 pixels. It's Eevee, so it's fast anyway. We get our clown pass the usual way. Switch to your normal viewport, say flat, random, get rid of the outline, say viewport render image. Sorry, you need to disable this one here. And you say viewport render image and you save it out by pressing Shift S. And then you assemble that. We can also get a mist pass, which I always recommend. So go to passes, click on mist. It's always useful. Let's press F12 and you can see how we render it out. It should be just a couple of seconds before this is done. Thanks to Eevee. Yeah, there you go. Perfect. So you have this pass. You can click on here and you can say mist and you get fairly rudimentary but still useful mist path and mist pass. And then you can use that to composite in Photoshop, which we'll do in a second. It's Photoshop time. So here we have our first shot brought into Photoshop, just a plain render. I have them all in here, and I also have the I have another set I made before, so I'm gonna go just quickly through some of the examples because I pretty much followed the same process for everything. So this is just the base render. I have the ID pass here. Maybe for you it looks a bit like washed out, but then you just go into the levels or curves and adjust the overall distribution, and then you can pump up the colors so it's easier for you to select. And the mist pass I also have here. I have it set to screen and 14%. You can play around with that. Normally it would look like this. I've also put a mask on it with a soft gradient to have it more affecting this area rather than all of it. I want to have the distance be more affected towards the horizon. So let's set that back to, actually you can set it to, you can actually leave it at normal. Maybe the screen doesn't do much. Let's set it so you can see what it does. So the mist pass is a bit rudimentary, but it is quite helpful still. So for the bottom here, I have a multiply layer to darken it down a bit. And then I can go into my ID pass and select some of these items. And then I can push the depth really and add like lots of these like little foggy things. I have like a couple of cloud brushes. See what they do. I mean, you can find them on the internet. or you can just use cloud pictures or whatever. So I can mask these out, and then I can quickly add some depth and some variation to it. I can highlight the areas that I want to highlight. So I want to highlight the sky, so I add a bit more fog behind him. Same for this. Same for some of the rocks, just to push the depth of the all over image. You can see how there's another layer behind those rocks to separate them out, so everything reads well. Here's an image of a sky image that I then mask out. I just select the sky part of it, and then I can use that as a mask and get rid of where I don't want it to be. I just want to have a bit more separation towards the background. And also add some clouds here in the top, just to brighten up the image a little bit. I thought some of the areas would get lost, or I want some more variety in the sky. And here, very important step, I need to paint over a little bit, just to shape the rocks exactly how I want them to be. Maybe they're too smooth, so I can paint on top a little bit. But this really is just like some squiggles, some quick marks with a brush. Then I add some cloud photos, I believe, or just more with a brush, just to highlight, just to blur certain edges and to highlight other edges. I don't want everything to be sharp. I don't want everything to be contrasty. I have to selectively choose which areas I want to be more highlighted. Add some color dodge here to highlight the lighter areas. Add a bit of shrubbery here, a little bit of grass, a little bit of little tiny plants just in the foreground, just to give it a bit of life. And then add another layer of like fog, smoke, cloudy stuff on top of it, just to push the immersion a bit more. And that's fine for this one. I also have my usual stack of adjustment layers that I want to use for this. So I'm color grading with a variety of color lookups, vibrance. You can use the file and you can go see what I did here. And then also there's a levels adjustment, a final one, some little bit of grain, a little bit of dust, some vignetting, and that's basically it. As for the second image, I chose this one. I also have a adjustment layer for this one. I chose a slightly different levels adjustment for that, just to get the colors to be a bit nicer. And I also see I missed something here. So let's see what we have here. It's basically the same thing again. So this is how it looks before, pretty dark. Add some of that mist path, the same as before. Here I replaced the sky completely with something brighter. Kind of wasn't working for me before. I copied the layer here in front and add a bit of motion blur, so it feels like the camera is like maybe moving, panning, or I don't know, zooming in. A bit darker. And now I'm adding some of the... Now I'm adding some fog in the distance. I picked the wrong color here, I guess. I just want to push the mountain range a bit more in the background. Here I selected with my ID pass this little tower here, and just to give it a bit more contrast. Was kind of getting lost in there. Adding some lights. I want these lights to interact with some of the fog here I drew in. So you see that it kind of would indicate that the light interacts with a bit of the mist, which is always nice. Added some more here. Maybe it's a bit too much. This one is a bit too contrasty here, this part. So I'll block it out a little bit. Just so it looks nice. Maybe this one also a bit darker. Just so the attention is in the middle area. For the last one, you see this is what we got out of Blender, of course minus the color grading. Here I copied the foreground and put a lens blur on it. You find that under filter, blur, lens blur. Just to play a little bit with the camera, to have, and not to have to touch up the front area here. I don't want to necessarily bash some photos in right now because I'm too lazy, I guess. But we don't really need to. It holds up, I think, fairly okay. Here's our mist path. Mist path, I'm going to say it wrong all the time. I added some stuff in the background. The same cloud texture again, the same cloud image to give us a little bit of a sky. Cutting out all the rocks here with our ID pass and adding fogginess to it, some photo, some fog from photos, a little bit of greenery here, as you can see, and some nice little lights, and that is already it for this image. So we can take a quick look at the other ones I did. So this is the kind of environment I did before, same technique, slightly different shapes, a bit larger in scale. I also modeled this little arc here, which is really nothing much. I just gave you the same texture. So here again the mist pass. Adding some fogginess, darkening down the foreground. And here adding some layers of like unevenness in the stones, some separation in the ground, some birds, some rocks. Birds like to go around big things, so it's a scale indicator. Here's a raven, because why not? That's the only animals that can survive here. The guy has to be in a hazmat suit. I have no idea. Just little things here to touch up this area and not have it to be so sterile, because it's really just blocks. I'm cutting in here to give this area some variety. I'm also adding some localized textures of rocks, just to give it a bit of some areas that are look a bit different on our, so to speak, hero object. Some more variety here, cutting into these rocks with like some paint strokes, just to not have it to be so even. The rest I don't care about, but for this object we want to have it look like, it almost looks like a tree now. Because the scale of it is quite small of these rocks. Maybe that's a problem, but it's okay. For the other ones, I did more like of an aerial shot here. Did very little to this. You can see how this already looks like. So here I mixed a rock texture with like a tree texture and mixed it just like I showed in the example. Of course, there's very little depth here, so we need to really push it, add our mist, darken down the foreground, give us a bit of range from foreground to background in terms of tones, and here adding more to it, and here adding quite a lot of cloudiness mist in there. So however you want to do it, cloud brushes, cloud photos, just use anything. And some in the foreground. I mean, look at these rocks. These look really shitty and low poly, but I think from here it's already fine. You can push it however much you want with photos or paint. And here a bit more dynamic shot. same thing again. Trying to get rid of some of that 3D-ness, mostly with localized touch-ups, whether it be gradients or, like you can see here, photos, paint strokes, adding little clouds and mist, adding big clouds and mist, adding a little tree that is very dead, and another dead tree. So just like as a little touch towards the end. And that's all for the Photoshop. I mean, it's pretty standard, it's pretty quick. It shouldn't take you more than a few minutes to do this. But nevertheless, it will really push the image much, much further than what you can still do in Blender, or would take you a lot longer to do if you start trying to do smoke simulations and all sorts of stuff. If you want to animate these, of course, it will be worth the time investment to do this in Blender. But I think for our concept art purposes here, these images will do very well. Okay, that's it. I hope you had fun, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.